The Entrepreneur MBA podcast purpose is to help existing business owners grow their companies past the 20 million in revenue per year benchmark. Here is your host, Stephen Halastik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halastik, and I am co-founder and managing partner of Financing Solutions. Financing Solutions is a leading provider of lines of credit to small businesses. Our line of credit program is fast, easy, and inexpensive, making it a great cash backup plan for your business. If you would like to learn more about our line of credit program, please visit us at www.fscreditline.com. Again, that's FS as in Financing Solutions, creditline.com, or give us a call at 862-207-4118. On a personal level, I have a 25-year career of building 7 companies. These companies have been in the $5 to $20 million yearly revenue range, having achieved the Inc. 500 fastest growing list. I have the privilege to speak with business owners on a daily basis. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and please subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting app so you can hear future podcasts. Today, I'm extremely excited to be speaking with my good friend, David Mamano, who is an entrepreneur, speaker, and coach from the Avante Entrepreneur Network and host of the Avante Entrepreneur podcast. I asked David to be on today's podcast because of his years of experience and close to 200 podcasts that he's done surrounding the entrepreneurship journey. I thought David would have great insight into what makes a great business and a great business owner. David, welcome to the Entrepreneur MBA podcast.
Hey, Stephen, I am so excited and honored to be on. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's going to be fun. You know, I first met David in 2007, and David and I went to the Birthing a Giants classes or program at MIT that was being sponsored by Inc. magazine and the Entrepreneur Organization. It was held at MIT. And David had a company called Next Step, which was a great company. And about 60 of us all went up to MIT for a 3-year program. It was like an executive week long. It was like, from 8 in the morning till very late at night. And they would bring all these special guests in and people to really teach us more about how to grow our businesses. Like all our businesses were already, good businesses. They were established, but the speakers that they brought in were just unbelievable. Dave, you missed that experience?
I thought it was fantastic. It was so much fun. And I remember the first day and, I had the great honor and privilege of you choosing to sit next to me and on that first day. And we hit it off and you were in the nurse staffing business at the time. And I thought that was pretty cool. And it was, I'm a lifelong learner like you, Stephen. I still do a lot of stuff. I need to, I think we're, true entrepreneurs are like sharks, right? We got to keep on putting, new water through our gills. And, I'm still going to things, similar to that, right? Going to retreats and workshops. And I just came back from Atlanta. I was in Atlanta for 3 days at a learning event on how to be not only a professional speaker, but how to be a paid professional speaker, giving keynotes and everything. So still learning, still loving all that stuff. And I know you are too. And I think it's a big part of being a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah. It was so interesting. And I don't think I never have had the same experience again of another intensive, exhilarating, learning experience like those 3 years were. The thing was like amazing was like, for many business owners, it's very lonely. When you're running a company, you really can't share with your employees what you're going through, nor can they understand it. And, maybe you could talk to your significant other at home, but even they can't understand it. And that's what makes like the entrepreneurship organization so powerful. But there's the entrepreneurship organization. And then it was wild when we were in the Birthing a Giants program because it was like, 50 or 60 business owners who were as intense as about learning as you and I are.
Yeah, and they were from around the world, right? Which was great. I mean, the guys from Australia, which were not only wickedly successful, they just wickedly fun, right? I mean, England and South Africa and India, all over the place, which I think made it even more special. And, I go to these events and you're right. I mean, nothing really has replaced the Birthing of Giants program, but, part of it is the learning, right? I mean, we learned some incredible things from some incredible people, but I'll say just as important is the people that you meet at these events, right? And the brotherhood and sisterhood that remain. I mean, we just, got an email from Mark Russo, who is, putting together our reunion, right? So we're going to get together in April next year. And this is how many years later, right? We started in 2007. So 12 years later, here we are still wanting to be together and connect. And so, Jim Rohn says what the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. And I think going to events like these, it's just the people that you meet, like-minded peers that, want to grow, want to learn. High tide raises all the ships are just as important as the learning that goes on.
Well, what's really amazing, too, is to hear everybody's story because, it's never a straight line up. It's always, up and down and up and down. And, you see some of the people that you've met and they've had failed businesses and successful businesses and failed marriages and successful marriages and, health scares and not health scares. And, it's just been interesting to watch the human experience and all these people that you've met, 15, 20 years ago. And I'm looking forward to that reunion as well, to hear everybody's story and what's gone on in their lives, certainly.
Yeah.
So I was really excited about bringing you on, David, because, I don't think there's not many people that have had the opportunity to talk to as many business owners, entrepreneurs, even you could say business consultants too, who are talking to business owners. And where you can get this perspective of what is the commonality, if there is one, in highly successful companies, highly successful business owners. And, you kind of hear from it. So I'd love to hear from you about what you think you've seen over the years in successful business owners, successful entrepreneurs, and successful people.
Well, number one, I think it's, attitude and resilience, right? Because, you know me well, I know you well, Stephen. We have ridden the incredible roller coaster of being an entrepreneur, right? I mean, we've experienced the highs and the lows. My first company, I nailed it, right? We created a multi-million-dollar company. We franchised it all over the country. I was an Inc. 5000 company 3 years in a row. I mean, it's just, I thought my poop didn't stink, right? And then, outside factors, the digital revolution crushed that business because the core model was a printed magazine. And so I got my butt handed to me, and rebuilding. And it continues to be highs and lows, right? But people don't understand all the time. Like, David, how do you keep on moving forward? How do you keep positive? Because I know I have such faith in my ability that my resilience is so strong because I know I have what it takes as long as I focus and just really buckle down and do what I'm supposed to be doing. I'll be back again, right, during those low times. So I think it's just an incredible, just a consistent, path moving forward, and you're in it for the long haul, right? So I think that's number one of being an entrepreneur, because you said it before, it can be lonely. It's not for everyone. That's why organizations like EO, et cetera. Frankly, that's why I created the Avanti Entrepreneur Network. We're helping small and medium-sized business entrepreneurs through this whole process because it's tough, especially when you're first starting out or you build your first million. It can be a very frenetic lifestyle, right? And we got to remember why we got into it. So I would say first and foremost, just really keeping that attitude of resilience and positivity. Winston Churchill has a great quote: when you're walking through hell, don't stop, right? Keep on going. This too shall pass, right? So I think that's really a strong characteristic of a long-term successful entrepreneur.
Do you think? Do you think that it could go too far, though? I mean, like I know one guy in particular who, it's the signs for years and years and years has been that he has a failing business, and he's wrecked his marriage, and he's behind, he's way in debt, and yet he just won't give up that idea of being an entrepreneur. And do you think it gets to a point where you have to say, it's time for me to move on?
That is a great question. I don't know, right? I mean, there are people who probably should give up, but then, I watch a movie like The Founder with Ray Kroc, who deep in debt, marriage wrecked, kept on going. And boom, created, not created, but he, brought McDonald's to the largest restaurant chain in the world. So it's tough. And a lot of times too, when you're an entrepreneur, especially if you've been an entrepreneur for a long time, you feel like you're unemployable. Like, how are you going to take orders from a boss, right? So maybe a hybrid answer to that is, is there a way you could, kind of, have a job, get paid, benefits, et cetera, while still growing your enterprise at the same time? That may be a nice little compromise, Yeah,
I think you got to reduce the risks. And the thing about being an entrepreneur is, I think the issue that I have sometimes is what are you doing to change? Are you trying different things with your business instead of doing the same thing over and over and over again and failing, And so, I think that's a different story if you are, really still going at it, but you're trying different things. And, right. I had a mentor who used to say to me, listen, if you give someone enough time, they'll figure it out. So,
Yeah, I guess you just have to have enough runway, right? Or enough tolerance for the hell that you're going to be going through to get there sometimes, right?
Yeah, the new word I've heard, I mean, I'm 54, and I heard that the 20-somethings are calling this new word, do you have a side gig?
Right, side hustle, right?
Side hustle, excuse me. Yeah, I'm so old, I didn't even know that, right? So I guess, maybe that's a good way to having some extra income coming in. But your point is well taken. I think every time that we meet a business owner, I think you and I would agree that they're really tenacious.
Yeah. And we're not always realistic, right? But I think the world is changed by unrealistic people. So it's a tough question.
Yeah. I've been at this for a long time, and, like you, and I don't know, sometimes I'd have to say is, I don't know if it's always worth it. I don't know if it's worth having a failed marriage, way in debt, to come out in the backside. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I guess it depends if in the long term you make it, right? If you get back on track and make it, then you can look back. The marriage thing is tough, obviously, but the looking back at the roller coaster of being an entrepreneur, I would think someone would say it was worth it if they make it big, right? Again, get to spike the ball. I love the movie Parenthood. Remember that from the 90s with Steve Martin? And the grandmother, his grandmother-in-law says, he was freaking out about something, right? And she gives him some wisdom, and she says, Sonny, there's two types of rides at the amusement park. You could ride the roller coaster, which goes ups and down and loops and dark tunnels, very scary, very exciting. Or you could ride the carousel, which just goes around and around and around, very predictable. And she was like, I prefer the roller coaster, And I always like that line because, listen, you only go around life once, and I don't want to have any regrets. I don't want to be in my rocking chair when I'm 95 saying, oh, why didn't I try that? And, I know that if I ever gave up being an entrepreneur and went and got, a job, it probably short term would fix a lot of things. But in the long term, I think I would really regret that I didn't, give it the full shot,
Yep. Great. So what would you say is the second thing that you've observed about successful entrepreneurs?
Well, most entrepreneurs that I have found that are successful is they have found a problem in the market and they try to solve it, right? And a problem could just be, a hole in the market, a space that's not being covered efficiently, a better way to do it, right? A different way to do it, right? Even like, we had Kendra Scott in our class at MIT, right? And she was just starting out, had a different way of doing jewelry, and it was very unique to her. And now I just flew into Atlanta for this conference, and I'm taking an Uber to the Marriott, and I pass this big mall, and what do I see? This Kendra Scott store, right? And so, did she solve? I wouldn't say she solved a problem, but she found a hole in the market of people wanting a different type of jewelry, right? For you, helping entrepreneurs, right? I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs, we don't have the credit history, or maybe we're in somewhat of a hole. So a traditional bank is going to say no. You found a hole in the market to come up with a different way of doing this, with a credit line instead of a traditional loan. And so you're able to be a little bit more flexible for your traditional entrepreneur that may need some money like tomorrow, right? So, with Avanti, with me, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that can't afford to be in Vistage or YP or EO yet. Avanti is a much more affordable solution for the small or medium-sized business owner, right? So I find that a lot of entrepreneurs will kind of take what they love doing or something that they're kind of good at, find, a hole in the market or fixing a problem, and that becomes their business. So I found that before, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you look at it that way, and if you're looking to solve a problem, you're more likely to be successful versus just opening up a business that competes against a lot of other companies that are in that same space.
Right.
Yeah. Which that's a mistake I made early on. I mean, I've been able to grow my companies just through pure business execution. But I wouldn't exactly, I had one company that really solved a great problem and it did well. But my first two were very businesses that everybody was competing in. And I'll tell you, it sure made me good at what I was doing, because when you're competing against a lot of other companies, you got to really execute super good.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Seth Godin says small is the new big. You don't need 1 million customers. You need maybe 20 really good ones sometimes, right? Yeah. It depends on the business. Another phrase is there's riches and niches, right? So a small business owner can do very well, create income for themselves coming home, $200,000 to $300,000 a year, which in most places is pretty good. And do very well with a relatively small number of customers by super serving a niche. So I have found that by focusing on solving a problem, like you said, often honing it down to a niche, absolutely, I think it's a great business way.
Do you find that, do you find that the rules and the lessons that you learn from the Wall Street Journal or from, the big companies don't really apply to small businesses? There's rules for them and there's ways of going about things for the big companies. And then there's kind of the ways that small companies survive.
I find that mostly to be true. I have seen before where you take a big company guy or gal and put them into a smaller company, and it just doesn't work, right? Just different issues, different problems. So a lot of times, the bigger businesses, they have more resources, more people, more money to kind of throw at some of the problems. Whereas the smaller businesses, now we got to be more creative. We got to come up with different systems and processes to take care of things. A mistake that may not even be a big blip at a big company could put a small company out of business. So I do believe it's a different world. Is probably the best way to say it.
Yeah. So what else? What a third thing that you would recommend or that you've seen?
Well, you know me, and I know this to be true of you too. I wrote a book called Make Love in the Workplace about 5 years ago. And it is rated G. It's all about workplace culture. I don't know if I could have that title today with everything going on, because it's not about, being Matt Lauer at work. It's about workplace culture. And I think that an engaged workforce, is really important, and having a very instigative strategy on how to make culture and your team number one is extremely important in long-term success. And people say, "Oh no, customers are number one." Personally, I disagree. I feel your team. So I'm not calling them employees. I'm calling them your team. Your team is number one, because and people argue with me, and I say, "All right, listen. If you're a farmer, right? I feel, in my opinion, the seeds are the team, right? And then they grow the plant, which is the customers. Really, the plant is the product, and then it gets picked by the customers, right? But nothing happens without that seed, which I feel is the team. So having a very purposeful strategy to make the team know that they're important. That they're engaged, making them engaged, and making them feel, even if they don't own it, the company, making them feel like owners. Giving them the environment to paint their picture at the company, put their fingerprint on their work, and be proud of it, and being able to get that support and feedback to be able to do that well. I think that's extremely important.
Is there someone that you've interviewed that? Or that you've met that you really thought did a tremendous job with their employees?
Well, I'm going to say right here in Rochester, New York, Wegmans. It's a grocery store, mostly in the Northeast, only 100 locations, and that's up until recently. They've doubled in size the past, I'd say, 10 years. But they're always on the Fortune 100. They're usually like best places to work, Fortune best places to work. They've been number one many times, usually in the top 10, and they're only in the Northeast, right? And so Danny Wegman and his father, Robert Wegman, and now Colleen Wegman, the daughter, it's a family-owned grocery store. They're doing something like $20 billion in business. They own 100%. They've grown the company and very public about it by saying that their employees, their team is number one. And they have very, very, very solid strategies to back that up. Like when you become a cheese manager, like manager of the cheese department at Wegmans, they send you to France and they send you to Italy for weeks to learn about cheese, right? And you come back and first of all, you're grateful that like Wegmans, my company, sent me to these countries, and you are, oh my God, are you passionate about cheese, right? And so they do those types of things. And guess what? When I, wander off to the cheese counter at Wegmans, I find myself buying, rare cave cheeses that are like $20 a pound because, the cheese manager was so passionate about how it's made and where it comes from, and gave me a sample. And before you know it, I'm buying a pound, right? So I think Wegmans is an incredible example of engaging their workforce to just love where they work.
Great. Good stuff.
And it ripples, right? It ripples to everything, the customers, the vendors, et cetera.
Well, I think it comes down to two is like, listen, the first two companies I started, I was a terrible manager. I was horrible. I just was not good at it. And then I had to really learn how to be a good manager. And that also involved learning how to love my people, like you're saying. And I became much, much better at it. And, there isn't anything I won't do for the people who work for me now. I mean, there's a lot of times there's things that come up in their personal lives that, that honestly I have to help them out with. And, and what I mean by that too is I'm much more proud of the person that I am today because of how I treat the people who work with me than I was 20 years ago when I was this crazy kid who just thought that making money was the only thing that counted.
Yeah, but kudos to you for being open to it and learning. I mean, how were you supposed to know all this stuff, right? You're in your 20s and 30s, just starting a company, but you were open to acknowledging that you could be better for your team, and you did it. And I know that you're a beloved leader, and so I think that's wonderful that you were self-reflective in knowing and learning that you can get better.
Yeah, I think the point I'm trying to make too is just that, it isn't all about just making money. It's also about creating a company that you're proud of. And can you really be proud of a company if the people that are working there are unhappy?
Yep. Yeah, and it comes across too. It comes like it is a reflection of you, right? There's an Italian phrase that says the fish rots from the head down, right? So, if the leader is terrible, there goes the rest of the company. This, service, communications, like product, right? But conversely, so if the head is healthy and fresh, there goes the rest of the team, right? So it certainly is a reflection. It's kind of a bad analogy, but how your dog kind of becomes you, right? After a while, so does your team, right? They see what you do more than what you say, and that's what happens to the personality and the mojo of the company.
Yep. What else? What else have you seen?
Well, and this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs are not good at, including myself. You're a rare breed, Stephen. But I think another important thing is creating systems and processes, right? It's very, especially, once the flywheel gets turning, usually the birth of the business, the entrepreneur is selling away and, doing everything and this frenetic, crazy thing going on. It works for a while, but eventually you're going to burn out. So you have to, as you start, creating, more employment, it's really important to have systems and procedures and processes through. Now, what I do, is I get help, right? Because I'm not good at that stuff, and I know it, right? I'm a classic visionary, mad scientist. I birth the baby and get it walking up to a toddler, and then I need help, right? I'm working with a coach right now, one of these EOS coaches who's helping me. I talk to her once a week, and she's helping me create all the magic behind the curtain, right, and keeping me accountable to it. So whether you the entrepreneur can do it or not, like find a way to get it, create processes, systems, and procedures so that you could just keep the show on the road.
Yeah, I did that with my my HR director once, and I said she was really, really good, and I said, what I want you to do is document all the processes that you do so that if you were not working here, I could walk in your office and do your job. And, so you're right, David. I mean, have the people working for you do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the other thing,
but usually, I was going to say quickly, very often the entrepreneur is not the right person, right? Because they're charging forward. They're the creative artist, right? And a lot of times creative artists are not good with the details and procedures and processes, and that's okay. Surround yourself with people that are, and give them the power to keep you accountable to those systems.
Yeah, the other thing too is I used to use the word best practices instead of processes and procedures, because processes and procedures sound so dry, but best practices kind of has a different feeling to it, and so we used to name all of our processes and procedures. We used to name them best practices. Best practices for starting a new employee, best practices for having an exit interview, whatever, so that we would kind of change the idea that this was drudgery. And I think that made a difference as well. I know David Hauser was on your podcast. Has he been on it more than once?
No, he's been on once. It hasn't aired yet. I think I was telling you about it, but I interviewed him a few weeks ago after I read his book called Unstoppable.
I read it too.
Yeah. Oh, one of the best. I got to tell you, one of the best books I ever read. Right, I'm doing a lot of things differently in my life now because of that book. But yeah, phenomenal interview. I can't wait for it to come out.
Yeah, I read that. I listened to his book. It was very good. But he was on one of my podcasts a couple months ago, and he said that the Birthing at Giants class that you and I went to, when he came out of that, he was like, on the first year, he said, "Oh my God," he goes, "We are doing everything wrong, and we have to build processes and procedures for everything we're doing." And, by the way, he sold his company for $160 million.
Yeah.
So,
on the first day of the first year, I sat next to you. And then on the second day of the first year, I sat next to him. and I remember saying, "What do you do?" And he explained it to me. I remember this is 2007, so maybe give me a little benefit of the doubt. But I had no idea what he was talking about. I'm like, what? Like, like Vonage, like VoIP. I'm like, yeah, I don't get it. Like.
I think I was the same way. Yeah.
But and then he goes and sells it for almost 200 million. So God bless him.
Yeah, no, 160 million. Yeah, but so he brought it up, and that was one of the things that he said made a big difference in him, his ability. And let's face it, $160 million company. You got to have processes and procedures. But certainly any small company. What I found is once you get past the $3-4 million mark in revenue a year, it's now starts to become really imperative that you're documenting what needs to get done.
Yep. I agree completely.
Good. So what else do you have on your list of things that you've seen?
Well, listen, I think you always got to be selling. I mean, you know this when you first start a company, the first year or two, you're going hog wild, right? I mean, those are the days you're doing, 30, 50, 70 calls a day, right? Just to get that flywheel turning, and you're busting out at all seams. And you got to do that in the beginning. There's no doubt, right? But then a lot of times, we get the flywheel turning, play it off the ground, whatever you want to call it. Good customer base, recurring revenue. And you don't have to do that anymore, right? I mean, you probably can't do it for too long before you'll just, have a heart attack, right? So, but never stop, right? Never stop, right? I mean, I think you always got to be in selling mode, and always, every day, like dipping your foot in that sales pond, doing something, right? Reselling current customers, selling current customers, getting them to buy new things, doing something with sales, because Darren Hardy used to be the publisher of Success Magazine. He put on another 3-day event that I went to. He has a great analogy. If you're ever on one of those old farmhouses and you see those water spigot things, and so he uses this great analogy. Whereas you walk up to it, and it hasn't been used in a while, you pump it like crazy, right? Pump. You're like, and a lot of people quit before the water comes out because they don't think it's going to come out, or they get tired. Where, if you just did it for like one more minute, the water's going to come out, right? So then the water starts going, and you don't have to pump as hard anymore because the water's flowing. Yet you still need to pump every now and then, right? To keep the water coming. So you don't have to go crazy anymore, but you still need to have some flow of pumping that water to keep it going. I think that's a great analogy for sales. Pump a lot in the beginning, and then continue to pump it not as hard as you keep it going.
Yeah, I guess it's always important too when you're the owner of the company that you at least know what's going on in different operations. So, like, we know that some people who start companies are they're more internal people. They're like maybe more technology oriented, or maybe their operations more oriented versus sales. But they should at least be, talking to the people who are doing the sales or salespeople to find out what's going on. And even when they go on calls with their salespeople, just so they stay close to their clients.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. They can't lose touch. They cannot lose touch, especially with the current customers. A lot of times, they bought the owner, right? They bought the passion and the integrity of the owner. And, they don't want to lose. They probably love the product and service, but having that contact and that touch with the owner is still very important.
Yeah. So anything else that you could think of that you've really noticed?
Well, I would say learn to say no. I mean, Warren Buffett, right? They asked him, what was your number one, reason for success? And then he says no 99 out of 100 times, even though a lot of times he wants to do the, exciting things. They sound great. He still says no. So if it's not super, super hyper-focused, aligned with his business, and sometimes even if it is, he says no. There's Jim Collins also says too that I think it's Jim Collins or Vern Harnish maybe, that companies are more often to die from indigestion, right, than starvation, which means too many opportunities and you're taking them all in, right? And we are people pleasers, right? Most entrepreneurs, we love people. We want to say yes. We want to, our as they say, our monkey brain takes over. We want to do this and go to that and say yes to this. Before you know it, you're like, what the hell did I get done today, right? So just saying no, 99 out of 100 times, I think creates incredible laser focused vision and therefore success.
Yeah, when you think about small businesses, I think that's really what we are. We're specialists, right? We kind of we're in this very niche market that big companies are not doing. That we found this little angle for our company. So it fits into what you're saying. And that is, if you're saying yes all the time, well, you're not a niche player. Therefore, you're not a small business. It seems to be big companies are the ones that can kind of say yes a little more often. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, they've got more time, more people, right? I mean, a lot of times you see the people that are on boards, right? Oftentimes are CEOs of bigger companies because they don't have a lot to do anymore, right? They've got all these managers and doing a lot of the work. But when you're a small-time entrepreneur, you're doing a lot of stuff and you don't always have the time. Like I've had to say no to boards that I love what they do, but I just don't have the time, right? Or events, So it's just all about focus. And maybe someday you'll have the time when your company's bigger. But if it doesn't align with your 2 or 3 goals for the quarter, then, you most likely want to say no.
So where do you see where do you see Avante going? I mean, Avante's been around for how long now? 15 years?
Oh no, just about 3. Yeah.
You're kidding me, really?
Yeah, wow. No, I had my previous business, Next Step U, the magazine, that was around for about 18 years. So that was the majority of my career so far. I started Avante about 3 years ago.
Wow.
Because after I sold Next Step U, I was looking for my next adventure, and I ended up coaching somebody to start a business, and they were like, "Wow, you're good at this. You should do this for a living." And so I started coaching, started doing events, started creating mastermind groups, and now it really has turned into a membership-based community of entrepreneurs. And we meet monthly and have speakers and all that stuff. And it's kind of like a mini EO, if you could picture that, or a mini YPO.
Yep.
And that's what it's become. And so right now in Rochester, we have about 80 members, a little over 80 members. I want to secure the beachhead. I want to have like a good 150 members. And then it's a living for somebody, right? Like this business model is a $200,000 to $300,000 income for somebody once I get it up to about 150 members. So then what I want to do is either license it or franchise it into different cities. And then globally, right? I mean, so imagine I have chapters all over the globe, and we could do like national and global events as well. So that's kind of my BHAG, is just having chapters all over the world and being able to do, global events.
Wow. That's exciting. And I can see it too. When you look at EO, which, I've mentioned a number of times in other podcasts, it can be incredibly frustrating to be an EO because there's no one person who's making sure that everything's going right and smoothly. Whereas with Avante, it's kind of like you have a proven way of helping people.
Yeah.
So I can see where Avante fits a really nice niche.
Thank you. Yeah. And, I appreciate that. And, I think, if I were to give you, one more thought about what makes a successful multi-million-dollar business, it's what I'm doing with Avante, what I'm striving to do, what you're doing with financing solutions is creating value, right? And that's at the end of the day, we got to remember that, so I would go back to Viktor Frankl, right? Man's Search for Meaning, one of my favorite books. And one of my favorite quotes in that book is, don't chase success, create value, and success will find you. That quote says it all. You look at most business owners and they are really trying to put out a good product that helps people, that makes a difference. And that is their focus. That's their focus, right? And then all of a sudden opportunities come their way for growth and scaling. But focusing on creating just such incredible value for the customer, if that can be your main thing, and that includes the team too, right? I mean, that's part of creating value is creating a team that is in line with that mission and treating them well so that they're all like, in the same boat. Success finds you.
Well, David, I knew you'd be a great guest, and I knew I would learn. I knew I would learn a lot from you today. And I just want to really thank you for being on today. We have to wrap it up, and if you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your business, please feel free to give us a call at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at fscreditline.com. That's FS as in Financing Solutions, creditline.com. And David, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they reach you?
So there's two ways. They can go to our website, which is avantyentrepreneur.com. Everything is there, everything that we do, my contact info. But if they just want to reach out to me personally, the easiest one is david@davidmamano.com. That's MAMMANO, david@davidmamano.com. And you know what, Stephen, I love, everything that you're doing. So I'm going to give your listeners my cell phone, 585-317-8254. Happy to help any of your tribe, your family, your listeners, in anything that they're doing with their entrepreneurial journey.
Fantastic. Great job today, David.
Thank you, Steve.
So I want to thank everyone for listening, and please remember just to keep getting better.